Okay, Vishwa, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can see your slides, sir.
Okay, I'll start off now. I guess everyone is there. So, good evening, everyone. I'm sorry for the delay because of some technical issues. So, I'm sort of happy to see a lot of participants here, and I'll just start off now. As a cardiologist, I don't get a chance to interact with the undergraduates that much, but I think every time I get to take classes or interact with students, guiding them in research or mentoring them, it has always been an exciting experience for me because I find this, and I discussion with my colleagues, all of us find that the students of today are very dynamic, talented, and much smarter than what we had ever been. So I am probably more excited than you to be given this chance to talk.
Sir.
Hello, yeah, yeah, Vishwa. Vishwa, anything? Okay, so basically we initially started with this idea of talking something on cardiology, introducing the subject to students, since as this was specifically for the World Heart Day. But we also thought that this is a chance to discuss a little bit about sort of some discussion on the philosophy of life and how to approach career choices as you come across these in the future. And that meant also a little bit of discussion about myself. So let me start with introducing myself. And I'm Raja Selvaraj. So I'm currently a professor of cardiology at JIPMER. I joined my MBBS in 1989. So Vishwa, is this clear now, audio? Okay, I'm assuming the audio is okay now. So I joined, yeah, fine. MBBS in 1989. So that's so I've been in medicine for more than 30 years now, and of course finished MBBS by about 95. And at that point, I was interested in pediatrics, so I joined pediatrics. Did pediatrics for 3 years, finished in 99, and then and at that point, I was interested in cardiology, so I trained in cardiology. The intention was to do pediatric cardiology, but subsequently I got interested in heart rhythm disorders, and that's where I specialize in cardiac electrophysiology. So I did a fellowship on this in Canada for 4 years, did a research fellowship and then a clinical fellowship. And after my fellowship, I joined here in JIPMER. So, so I wanted to discuss sort of this so that it provides some material for what sort of choices you can make when you proceed with career and also in your life itself. And looking back, I think some of the choices that I've made, some sort of rules that have guided the choices that I've made, are one is to pursue what you're interested in. Like at every step after MBBS deciding to join pediatrics, or after pediatrics deciding to join cardiology, or after cardiology to pursue electrophysiology was all because I found that particular field interesting. So I think that is one thing, that you should see what is interesting to you and try to pursue that. Never make money an important thing in making choices. So I'll sort of come to that again when I discuss some of the issues. And I also decided to work at a teaching hospital. So this is again something that you have to decide. One thing or the other may suit you better, whether to work in a commercial setup or to work in a academic setup like this. And another very important thing that has guided me throughout is that there is more to life than just medicine and work. In that, a lot of people end up living a life where their work is the only thing they do in life. They work from 7 to 11 in the night and just sleep, and then again go back to work the next day. And the same thing can happen during your studies also, that you're just only studying and not doing anything else. But I think it's very important to have a sort of balance between other things in life, and life should be should always be about other things that you do in leisure also, which should have equal importance to what you do in studies or work. So just as an example, to take myself, I've pursued photography, which I still continue to do. I'm interested in trekking, so I do that every year. And then I'm interested in writing computer programs, so I do that again with a lot of software related to work and to cardiology also. And I still play a lot of chess, read a lot of books. So I'm saying this just to sort of make it clear that you can still have a life if you do medicine, because some people end up with this notion that medicine and getting into this means a very that you have to be focused on medicine and that you should close yourself to everything else in life. When you enter as medical students, you're already a pre-selected set of people who are motivated, who are talented. But during the course of medicine, many people tend to not pursue other interests, thinking that they have to spend all their time in studies and in working. But I think it's important to keep all the other parts of life also alive. So I want to talk a little bit about, and I called it as philosophy of how you should live your life. But as a disclaimer, I don't believe in trying to learn from what other people say. So I'm also not going to try and preach and tell you that you should learn from what I'm telling you. I don't believe in all these self-help books and philosophy books. But by philosophy here, I just mean looking back at some of the things that have guided how I've lived my life. And I hope some of those could help you too. One of the key things I think is what I would call passion, which means anything you do, you should do with, it should come from your heart, and you should do it with a lot of interest. There are always, there'll always be places where your brain pulls you to one side and your heart pulls you to one side. So people sometimes come to me for advice when they're choosing, for example, a postgraduate career, and their parents, there may be a lot of reasons. So brain is always when you're putting reasons and logic behind it. And it may be just because their parents are guiding them towards, let's say, take orthopedics, or they have a hospital already set up where they need an anesthetist, or they want to take a particular specialty because that is what is in demand now, or that pays better. So you have a lot of ways the brain tries to convince you to take something. But what I would say always is you follow your heart. So in your heart, you'll always know that this is what you really want to do. When you've been working in the pediatric ward, you might feel that this is what I want to do in life. I want to work with children. So what your heart says, I think you should always try to follow. So that should happen with career choices and choosing what to study. And passion should also be there always in education and as you learn. So obviously a lot of learning tends to be dreary stuff, and might be some amount of rote learning, and or not all of it is going to be interesting all the time. But at least once in a month, or once in 2-3 months, you should have that time there is a spark and you feel that this is something that is really interesting, and you should really feel passionate about learning that. If what you're learning is not exciting enough for you, you should really seriously rethink if you should be doing something else, if you should change your career or change the particular specialty that you're in. So this quote of Yeats is something that I've always kept in mind, that education should not be the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. So filling of a pail, you can imagine as something very mechanical, and it's something to be done as a duty, whereas lighting of a fire is what education should feel like. So especially at my stage, you tend to see among my colleagues, I can see two kinds of doctors. Once people have been in medicine for 10 to 20 years, there is one set of people who are disillusioned, who are dispirited, who are pessimistic about everything, who will say that I'm never going to let my children get into medicine. And then there is the other set who are extremely happy and who think medicine was the best thing that they did, and the choice to do this was the best thing they did. So Vishwa, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay, so again, I don't know why this is happening, but again, I've lost my screen here. So this seems to be happening today.
Yes, sir. I'm not able to see your screen, sir.
Yeah, so it was all right so far. So the only way I did last couple of times is to restart. So should I go ahead and do that? I don't know why this is happening. So you have space for one more participant. Can I join again? Like I'll try to join from the laptop.
Yes, sir, sure, sir. Yes, sir, sure, sir.
I'm just switching over to my laptop.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Vishwa, is this okay now?
Yes, sir. Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So, sorry about that again. So what I was saying is that at this, I find people who are sometimes bitter about the choice of medicine and feel that they would not take this again. Same thing is happening here. So I think something else is happening when I'm sharing the screen. I've lost screen again here also. Okay, you can hear me now, Vishwa.
Yes, sir.
Okay, what I'll do is I'll just speak and finish from here because there's some issue that constantly I'm losing my screen. I'm not sure what the issue is now. Okay.
I think something else is happening. Okay, sir. Sure, sir.
Yeah. So for some reason it's just going dark every time. So I've changed the system also. Fine. So the main things that I wanted to say was that you should let your heart, decide to pick the choices for you, and you should do things with a passion. And the other thing is the key thing is that don't let financial aspects or money come into the decisions that you make when it comes to decision of say which specialty to choose or whether you should work in an academic hospital versus a private hospital and things like that. And then I wanted to introduce a little bit about cardiology itself. And so cardiology might seem like that it's a very long journey to reach the level of a cardiologist, because after 5.5 years of your basic undergraduate course, you have to do another 3 years of medicine or pediatrics and then do 3 years in cardiology. But I think a long period of education, one way you might think of it as something bad, that it takes a long time, but it's also nice that you should take it in a positive way, that it's a lot to learn. And when it comes to different specialities and choosing among them, I tend to think of it like this: that you have some specialities which are more about more of an art, and you have some specialities which are more of a science with more logical aspects to it, and some other specialities where there's more of humanitarian aspect of helping patients. And I think cardiology is a good mix of those. There are a lot of things which is skill and intuition based. There's also a lot of things where logical deduction comes into play, and there are a lot of places where you can do interventions where you change a patient's life, and therefore it can feel extremely rewarding to you. So I think if when you do, generally it's based on whether you like more of medicine or surgery, you can take a decision on which kind of branches you want to go to. So people who like surgery are people who like action, who like to do some interventions and see results. Whereas medicine is where, there's more subject and more to learn. So cardiology incorporates elements of both. So if you find both of these interesting, you can probably get into cardiology. And at this point, if you're thinking of getting into cardiology, and that's about 5 to 10 years in the future, you should definitely plan for specializing further once you get into cardiology, because there are multiple subspecialties within cardiology, each of which has become fairly complex and detailed, so that you cannot just stop with cardiology at this point. The important specialties would be one is non-interventional cardiology, where you can be a cardiologist who primarily sees patients on an outpatient basis, and you would do imaging for them, do stress tests, ECGs, and look after patients. That can be rewarding in its own way, and it's a sort of low impact kind of practice. Then there is again non-interventional field itself. There is cardiac imaging that you can get into. So imaging includes ultrasound as in echocardiography. You have cardiac CTs, cardiac MRIs. So while on one side you have people who have done radiology who get into cardiac imaging, on the other hand, we also have people who are primarily trained in cardiology also can get into cardiac imaging. So that is again something that is an upcoming field. Another field which is really upcoming and going to become more important is heart failure and heart transplants. So there are a lot of patients with heart failure who need specialized care, and specialized heart failure physicians are coming up. And these patients also look after patients who are either scheduled to undergo transplant or have had a transplant before. Apart from this, the traditional specialties include coronary interventions, people who primarily do the angioplasties. Structural heart disease, structural heart specialists is another sort of new specialty where you have interventions not related to the coronary arteries. This includes like valve replacements, which are being done percutaneously now, and other procedures. And then you have the pediatric cardiologists who look after children. And then you have cardiac electrophysiologists like me who look after heart rhythm disorders. So there's a lot of different specialties that you can specialize in if you come into cardiology. And I think it's something that you should consider. And finally, as it's World Heart Day, I just a few words of sort of advice on, because at this point of your life, the habits that you start will stay with you lifelong. So to try and keep yourself heart healthy, most important is to maintain a good amount of physical activity each day. Things that you can avoid, things like using a lift and things which you can avoid like that. And you should inculcate habits like walking regularly each day and doing some amount of physical activity. In terms of diet, we are realizing the importance of taking adequate helpings of fruits and vegetables and reduce saturated fats and refined sugars. And hopefully none of you have started to smoke, so don't smoke. And if you're already smoking, consider stopping that. I think with those things, I'll stop here. I'm sorry about the technical issues because of which we could not go through most of the presentation. But so if we have any questions, I think if you can unmute specific participants who have questions, we can answer a few of them.
Ma.
We could not go
You
through
can
most of
ask
the presentation, but
Hello.
yeah, hello.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening.
Sir, just wanted to know after NEET PG examination or next whatever it will be implemented. So, what is the scope of cardiology in the near future, sir, or next 5 years?
Yeah, so first, of course, to get into cardiology, if you're interested, you would go into medicine or pediatrics. And if you go into pediatrics, of course, logically you go into pediatric cardiology, but it's not necessary that you have to do that. After pediatrics, you can still get into even coronary interventions and stuff. So if you think you might want to do cardiology, I would say you should get into medicine. Or again, if you're interested, get into pediatrics. Now, in terms of scope, as you know, like heart disease is a very prevalent issue. It's actually it is a condition which increases as the country becomes affluent, and there's increasing pollution, increasing obesity, and all these things. So heart disease is not going anywhere. So it's going to be there all the time. And like I said, it's a field which is where all these specialities are growing further and further. So say 10 years back, it was mostly general cardiologists who used to do everything. But now we have, if we have a child with heart disease, you go to a pediatric cardiologist. If you have a heart rhythm disorder, then you go to a cardiac electrophysiologist and so on. Newer technologies are coming up where, even valves can be changed by a cardiologist instead of going to a cardiac surgeon by a percutaneous approach. So structural heart disease specialists are coming up. As heart transplants increase as a mode of therapy that is being used, again, heart failure people come up. So in terms of scope and whether there'll be relevance if you do cardiology, I think you don't have to be worried. It is definitely a field where there's always going to be work to do.
Okay, sir. Thanks a lot, sir.
Yeah.
Sir?
Yes.
Sir, apart from knowledge, how should be a cardiologist? Should be mentally and physically fit, sir?
I think whatever you do in medicine, you should probably be fit. So like I said, I think mentally, so like that's why I was trying to emphasize that probably one thing you should do is uh, keep all other interests in life also active. I mean, everyone will have some interest. Somebody might be interested in, say, music, it might be dance, or it might be some sports. So never put off these things saying that at this point I have to be focused on studies and I'll get into all this later. Or then later, once you get into work, then people think I'll keep all this for after retirement and things like that. So don't do that. I think those should stay as a part of your life. So that keeps you sort of mentally also alert. It avoids burnout that can happen. Uh, so that is, I think, always there. And physically, like I was saying, I think again, it's very important for everyone to be aware of staying fit. I think once you're a cardiologist, we become more aware of that. But as medical students itself, everyone should be aware of that to stay fit, eat healthy, uh, regularly exercise, and things like that.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, nowadays all the operations have become automated. We should learn handling instruments also, sir.
No, not automated. See, cardiology is a field where there is, we do a lot of interventions also. So in a way, it's a bit like surgery, some of the things that we do. So for cardiology, usually some amount of surgical skills are also necessary, but that is once you enter a field, you learn how to use the instruments and all that. So nothing different in that compared to the other subjects.
Yes, sir. Thanks a lot, sir.
Welcome.
So we have one question on the YouTube live chat that what do we need to do if we want to join cardiology after MBBS? Like what stream to choose, how to go about it?
Yeah, so that's what I said here. So I think if you have an idea that you might want to do cardiology, of course, the prerequisite is that you should have done either medicine or pediatrics. So these are the two postgraduate courses that you can do, which can take you further to cardiology. So you should do one of these. Choosing among this, of course, you can decide based on what your interest is. If you're interested in children and decide that you're going to go more for a pediatric specialty, you can do pediatrics. If you want to keep your options open, you think that you might go finally into neurology, endocrinology, or cardiology, that kind of thing, you can do medicine. But it's usually one of these that you choose. And then,
Okay.
yeah, again, once you do medicine or pediatrics, as you're finishing that, if you find that you're interested in cardiology, from there you can get into that.
Okay. And we have one more question saying how much ECG is important in identifying a cardiac problem and how specific it is.
So ECGs are, I mean, I don't think ECG is specifically for cardiologists also. For anybody in medicine, I think ECGs are a very important investigation. So reading ECGs and understanding, interpreting them is something that you all have to get familiar with. Uh, Even though ECGs have been around for more than 100 years now, they continue to be a very important part of a lot of medical practice. So it is a very vital part.
And we have one more doubt, like what's better, studying here or abroad if they want to choose cardiothoracic surgery? Sir, am I audible? Hello?
Good evening, everyone. I am Swarnamutha Lakshman from Venkateswara Medical College, Puducherry. On behalf of South India Medical Students Association, SIMSA Puducherry, I thank you all happily for attending Myorush, the webinar on a deep insight into cardiology. It is always happy to learn new knowledge, and webinar is the real source of learning, that too during the pandemic. We are very privileged to thank our honorable guest, Dr. Selvaraj sir, Professor in Department of Cardiology, JIPMER, Puducherry, for providing a wonderful information regarding cardiology. The immense response from the members of SIMSA for the webinar was stunning and encouraged us to do it in a wonderful way. I thank you all for patient listening. I thank everyone, including the organizers, hosts, and members. Happy new learning, friends. Thank you. This is SIMSA Puducherry signing off from you all for now. Thank you.